Welcome to 12 Ounce Sports Radio and The Burn with Mitch Show. Here's your host, Mitch Bernstein.
And welcome to 12 Ounce Sports Network and The Burn with Mitch Show. This is your host, Mitch Bernstein. Happy New Year 2021. Everybody is well, I hope. You had a very relaxing and non-adventurous New Year's. As I did, I went to my social media manager's house. We played some games, had some adult beverages because I am an adult anyway, and enjoyed the evening. It was fun, and came home and watched the ball drop with nobody in New York, which was really kind of weird. And then went to bed. So. It's a new year. Let's hope things get better soon with the vaccination. And the good news is there are lots of sports going on. We've got the NBA, obviously in full swing. We have the playoffs, the wild card weekend. Wild card weekend. You got 6 games this weekend. It's going to be awesome. 3 Saturday, 3 Sunday. We've got very little happening in Major League Baseball. And the hope is that the hot stove season starts heating up, and hockey camps, NHL hockey camps are opening, and the college basketball season is underway. Though there are some issues with some COVID, especially here in the Philadelphia area with Villanova, unfortunately. But I think we'll get through that. Mentioning on Sunday Night Football, which we're going to talk just a little bit about. It was mentioned, Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth mentioned about, they're sitting there now. Who knew what was going to happen? Who knew what was going to happen? And were they even going to be sitting here at this stage of the game? So they got through this season, and we got some really fun playoff games coming up. So should be a good, fun sports weekend. Let me tell you about the show tonight. We have a special caller coming in on at 6:08. He's going to be talking about the New York Giants and whether he'll be crying about it. I don't know. But he's actually calling now. He's got to call in 5 minutes. So I'll let him know that. But he's going to call and I think complain about the Eagles this weekend. And then at 6:20, we have Scott Simkus. Scott Simkus is a baseball author and historian. And looking forward to talking to Scott at 6:20. He'll be talking about his book. His book is called Outsider Baseball. And it talks about the baseball back in the late 1800s. And it goes through up to the Negro League started. So we're going to talk about that book and then the Major League Baseball recognizing the Negro League's statistics up through 1948, I believe. Then at 6:45, our last appearance of the show with our guest Brendan Deeg. Brendan, I'm sure, has a lot to say about the Eagles' season. A lot of controversy about Sunday's game. And it's going to be fun to talk to him and let him rant. I tweeted out that there'll be some ranting going on tonight. So hopefully that'll be fun to listen to. And then at 7:25, Jeff Warren from the Philadelphia Sports Table podcast show will be on, also talking about the Eagles, and we're going to throw in a little bit of Phillies there. So looking forward to that, those conversations. We're waiting on my friend Bernie to call in and talk about his Giants. Because if you were aware of what happened on Sunday night football, good old NFL moved the game to a national audience. And we weren't sure. We kind of figured the Eagles were going to lose because of all the starters that they were sitting on the bench. And what happened was really kind of fun. Well, what happened to Bernie there? Oh man, I'll have to have him call back. I don't know what happened there. So yeah, we're gonna see if he starts crying about the game and the Giants on Sunday because they were complaining that the Eagles lost and tanked the game, and there's a lot of discussion on that tonight. So hopefully he will. Um, hopefully, I hope he cries because I want to answer his. So who's there?
Hello?
Is this Bernie?
Yeah.
Bernie,
Who's this?
this is your friend the Burn with Mitch.
Hello? Is this Bernie? Oh, I'm on a delay here. Oh, this is crazy.
Oh, no delay. Stop the delay.
This is your friend the Burn with Mitch.
Bernie, what are you doing? You're messing me up, dude. He's on a delay.
I gotta turn this off. Wait, hold on. I can't figure this out.
All right, he's figuring this out, folks. Good old Giants fans.
I gotta turn this off. Wait, hold on. I can't figure this out. All right, he's figuring this out, folks.
See, you can hear me on the other side, which you really don't want to have happen.
There we go. All right.
All right, you there?
Yeah, it took me a while. I have my assistant doing it.
Oh, goody.
So,
I know who that is, I think.
Yeah. So I just want to first. I'll start off by saying I'm a Raiders fan, not a Giants fan, but I live in New York City, so part of me is a Giants fan, and we're kind of upset at what went on with Philadelphia, as is Philadelphia players are upset with what went on with their team. So I want to hear you as an expert on the Eagles, your take on this.
Well, here's the thing. Lots of different phases to this. The basic point here, Bernie, is stop complaining. If the Giants had won one more game, it wouldn't have been an issue. Big deal,
Why are the Eagles players complaining?
Well, they didn't know about it. Okay,
they didn't know about what?
They didn't. So what happened was Jeff McClain, a reporter, came out yesterday and made this comment that players came up to Doug, were going to approach Doug on the sidelines, and were in fact ready to do so, but were stopped because they didn't know what was going on. That was
what was going on?
So I'm trying to tell you. So what happened was, we don't know if that was true because a lot of people here were saying, "Oh, Jeff McClain, he doesn't know what he's talking about. They said they knew, blah blah blah." Okay. So Miles Sanders today on WIP here in Philadelphia on Jalen Hurts sitting. Man, if I'm being honest, nobody liked the decision. Nobody. That's all I can say, really. I don't know who was the main person behind that decision. All I know is that a lot of people on the team were confused. So, my whole take is this. First of all, yes, you're playing the game. You want to play the win. The Jalen Hurts is out there. He wasn't apprised, supposedly, of the situation. Doug did BS his way through a press conference saying that, I played to win. Yet, it all looks perception-wise that he didn't. That is aside from the fact that the Giants are complaining because you know what? The Giants have to take care of their own business, okay? If the Giants had won one more game, all of this would have moved a moot point. Number two, did anybody complain that Patrick Mahomes and Ben Roethlisberger sat this weekend? No. Nobody complained, okay?
And you know why? And you know why they sat?
Why?
Because the games meant nothing. The standings were already set for them.
And so did the Phillies game, the Eagles game.
The Phillies game didn't. No, it didn't.
It didn't matter. It didn't matter. It didn't matter to them. They could get cared less.
If it didn't matter to them, why didn't they just start the guy then?
Because they wanted to hurt some time.
You're dealing with one of the top New York City sports people. Let me just say, if it was reversal, Eagles fans would be going nuts, and your phone calls would be nonstop. First of all, you play the game to win. That's just the rules of sports. You know that. why would he risk playing players? Why were they going after him in the locker room if everything was so calm and easy? This is one of the worst decisions ever in sports history. Obviously, I'm not the only one to think that. The Eagles, if they lost outright, no problem. But when you bring in a quarterback in the fourth quarter that's barely played, he throws an interception, he fumbles the ball, you're obviously not out there to win. You put your best players out there. Jalen Hurts on the sidelines, you read his lips, said, "Are you kidding me?"
Hey,
So
I'm not saying
up for us. Go ahead.
Bernie, I'm not saying what he did showed integrity for the league, which is what Joe Judge was bitching about yesterday. I'm just saying, on the other side, the Giants side, in essence, Philly Eagles fans are saying, screw you. We don't give a crap about the Giants because we don't like the Giants because you're in the NFC East with us. And if you really wanted to take care of your own business, you would have won some more games during the season. So stop bitching at us. Now,
yeah, but the Redskins are also in the same division, and they could have stopped them from being in the playoffs. So it wasn't just the Giants. They just, imagine if Dallas would have won what they would have done. They probably would have started
hey, listen,
no quarterback.
listen. There's two sides to this coin. It's the Giants fans bitching about it. I'm not saying that what Doug did and what the Eagles did, and Doug, my whole thing is Doug should have been fired today for doing this. Okay,
Yes.
he should have been fired today from if his players and what Miles Sanders said, because we didn't know about this until this morning when Miles Sanders said this. If this is true, how do the players now have his back in that locker room? Jeff Lurie needed to say to Doug, you know what? You lied to these players. You no longer have their back. They don't have yours. You're gone. That hasn't happened yet. So
No.
I think
I get it.
and I put it out
that.
there that he's negligent, and Jeff Lurie is negligent as the owner if he doesn't fire Doug Peterson as soon as possible. So that's my point.
100%. 100%. He's lost his reputation in the league. What coach would do that regardless? But, I just have to say you're totally right. The Giants, it's in their own hands. All they had to do was win one more game. But when you're counting on a team to play its best with its best players, it's kind of disheartening. And, he didn't start off that way. That's the problem. He didn't start off that way. If he wanted to lose and he didn't want the Giants, he would not have started that way. Why end that way?
He would have started Nate Sudfeld at the beginning of
right.
the game.
Right. If you started him at the beginning, I totally get it. But, it made no sense. Again, I am not a big Giants fan. I actually tried to get a few big Giants fans on to call you, but they couldn't. So as a football fan, I think it's disrespectful for the game. And, honestly, if people want to tank, the Jets could have tanked and lost both their games and got the first pick. So the Eagles, just, as an Eagles fan and you do the Eagles sports show, just a lot of bad negative stuff going on.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. So if you can listen tonight to my second and third guests, we're really going to be talking about this a lot and get their thoughts because I look at it a certain way in terms of watching the game and when he put again, yes, I was surprised that he put Sudfeld in, but the biggest issue is has he if he did this, Doug, and these players legitimately did not know, he's lost the team, and I don't know how he could come back.
Yeah,
no,
I totally agree. I just feel, we'll see. I'll listen to the rest of it and see what these Eagles, pro Eagles people think.
Yeah.
But I'm sure Eagles fans would rather have won the game than lost the game. I mean, you play to win it. So who knows?
There's another perspective on that.
He will not have a job.
There's another perspective on that, Bernie, which is the draft pick. They went for, they got the sixth pick. So it's, it really is a controversy. And who knew this was going to and listen, there was enough crap that went on with this Eagles team this year. Did they really need another one? And Jeff Lurie's going to look at this and go, holy crap, what are you doing, Doug? So I'll be shocked if he stays.
I'm hoping, and I think a lot of people are hoping he's fired and just blacklisted from the league. And I mean, who wants this guy coaching after that if he can do that? So I'm going to listen to the rest of the show. Thank you for having me on.
All right, buddy. How's everything going? Good?
Everything is going well. It's cold. I'm sure it's cold by you. And
yes. Tell
family doing well.
Tell Judy to stop texting nasty stuff.
Okay. All right. This is how we work, yes. New York.
All right. Listen.
All right, buddy.
Listen to the next guest. It'll be great.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye. Take care. Yeah. So that's. I can't wait to talk to Brendan and Jeff from a Philadelphia Sports Table podcast show about this. I mean, he not only. Yeah, my brother Steve did the same thing. Steven, yes, thank you for tweeting out nasty stuff or texting nasty stuff. He put himself in so much more hot water than he should be in. And I'm going to talk again. We'll talk to Brendan about this. We'll talk to Jeff. How do you allow Jeff Lurie? How does Jeff Lurie allow Doug Peterson to stay on as a coach for another day? It's unfathomable to me. It's incomprehensible to me. It's egregious. It's unbelievable that if Jeff Lurie doesn't do something and get rid of him, then he is also obviously a problem. There's too much loyalty on this team if that happens. And it's been the same way for so many teams in this city, which is so depressingly annoying, which happened to the Phillies for years. The Flyers hung on to some GMs too long. So it's just, and the Sixers did the same thing with Brett Brown as the coach. So at least the Sixers have some things turned around. The Flyers have a new coach and a new regime. And they played well last year, and they're looking to continue that. But these two other franchises are just the worst in terms of keeping their loyalty as a primary factor for keeping people on, as opposed to making your business better, your team better. We know it's a business, so if you make bad decisions as a coach, you need to go. Doug Peterson needs to go. Jeff Lurie doesn't do it. He's negligent. He owns a team. No one's going to fire him, right? No one's going to fire him. All right, so I think this is Scott Simkus. Hello, Scott. How are you?
Bernstein?
This is Mitch Bernstein. Scott Simkus, how are you, my friend?
Oh, my God. I'm great, man. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. Thanks for calling. Scott, where are you calling from?
Suburban Chicago.
Whereabouts?
Carroll Stream. I'm about 25 miles west of the city in DuPage County.
Yes, and I used to live in Des Plaines.
Well, there you go. Yes.
So how about that, huh?
Well, there we go. Are you originally from Des Plaines, or are you from where you?
Yeah, I was born here in Philadelphia, actually.
Okay.
And moved all around for jobs. Lived in Houston for 10 years. Chicago, and then moved down to Houston. And now I'm back here in the Philadelphia area. Have been here for 25 years, which is great. We've been having fun. So, Scott, I'm so glad I found you. And thank you for coming on and taking some time with me. We're going to talk nice and calmly, as opposed to my previous caller who was complaining about the Eagles and what they did to the Giants. And then my next two callers are Eagles folks, and we're going to talk about that too. So we're going to have a nice, very interesting, fun conversation.
Cool.
First of all, about your book. It's I'm so glad, and FYI, I ordered it and it's on its way. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, I look forward to reading it. So the book is called. We're going to talk about this first, your book, and then we'll transition into the most important piece, which is the MLB recognizing the Negro League stats, which I know that
sounds good, man. Sounds like it'll be fun.
Yeah. So tell me, Scott, what prompted you to write the book? Obviously interested in baseball history. And so how did it come about?
Well, I just had unanswered questions about the history of the game, and in particular the Negro Leagues. There's a lot of anecdotal and folklore and that kind of stuff, and but very little in the way of data and hard evidence. And so that's sort of what led me to the book. I would find all these little interesting tidbits as I was looking for box scores, and I turned those into different types of stories. Kind of discovered this entire world of professional baseball that we don't know about, that the Negro Leagues were part of a bigger world with these semi-pro and amateur white teams. They were all part of this sort of outsider universe with these really interesting, the Negro League teams were the big draw. They had the best players, but there were really, really interesting white teams that they played against. So I sort of covered that. There was a world that existed until about 1950, when integration and television kicked in, then that went away. So.
Right. So I love the description. Did you write this description? This is where Babe Ruth, included among the former and future major leaguers were mercenaries. I love the word scalawags.
Yes.
And
well, yeah. I mean, there was.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the guys that financed this stuff were. Racketeers is not the right word, but guys that were running the numbers in lottery games in the inner city, and that's where they got the money. So there's some really, really interesting. Yes, and some of the guys that owned the Negro League teams were, they couldn't get money from banks. You walk in as an African American in the 20s, and they're like, "See you later, buddy." So they had to find ways to finance their own stuff. Which is fascinating. And the players were dirtbags too. Some of them. I mean, not the African Americans, but there were some funny white guys who were kicked out of organized baseball and had to end up playing in this different universe.
Oh, okay, so that's what you're talking. Yeah, those.
Yes.
Mercenaries, yeah, and obviously and outcasts too. So
yes.
So reading about again the description: Babe Ruth, Rube Waddell, John McGraw. Cross bats with Cuban Stars, Tokyo Giants, the Brooklyn Bushwicks, dozens of famous Negro League teams, and novelty acts such as the House of David. And I was, it's funny. I watched. What did I watch? Where the House of David came into play. Was that with 42? Did they mention there wasn't 42? Was it where the House of David came in?
Oh, I'm not sure.
It wasn't in that movie.
Sure.
Maybe it's because I read about it. Being Jewish, I said, okay, maybe it's a Jewish team. No, it wasn't a Jewish team.
Yeah.
And
girls. Yeah, right. They had the long beards and everything, so a lot of people are confused about that. But there was actually a very good Jewish team in Philadelphia, and I'd love to talk about that if you're curious.
Sure, absolutely.
That played against the Negro League teams and has a very interesting connection to sports today that a lot of people aren't aware of. With Abe Saperstein and Eddie Gottlieb. These guys were involved with Negro League and white semi-pro baseball in the 30s and 40s, and just kind of an interesting connection to the NBA today. So there's a little bit of a crossover between black baseball, the Jewish semi-pro and promoters who were very important to the Negro Leagues in that scene, and it's sort of interesting. Like Eddie Gottlieb was a part owner of the Philadelphia Stars, which was a Negro League team in the 30s and 40s, and he ended up owning, of course, was one of the founders of the NBA and owned the Philadelphia Warriors, and so you see a lot of crossover. And, as a matter of fact, some of the players played with the Globetrotters, who also played in the Negro Leagues as baseball players. So,
wow. Okay.
Yeah, and the Jewish team was the South Philadelphia Hebrew Association, the Spahs, who were more famous as a great basketball team in the 20s and 30s, but they also had a great baseball team in the summer and played against the black teams and had some pretty fierce, series and games and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And Abe Saperstein was obviously involved with the Globetrotters, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and this was he was running the Globetrotters during the winter. And in the summer, in the 40s, he got involved with the Birmingham Black Barons, which was a team in the Negro American League, a baseball team. And he was one of the promoters, and he knew a lot of guys that ran ballparks throughout the Midwest, and helped with booking non-league games for the Black Barons. A number of the guys who played on that team played for Saperstein in the winter on the basketball team. So there's a crossover between the two sports. both in the actual people who were running the teams, but also the type of entertainment that they provided in terms of the comedy and stuff like that. That I mean, they were playing hard, and they beat major league teams more often than they lost. But they would also take a break between, say, the seventh inning, and and put on so like a juggling show with the baseballs and or a comedy routine, and they really had to, provide entertainment for people to keep them coming back. So,
right.
Usually they blow the teams out 10-2, so they had to do something else. To, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to come into your city, we're going to beat the crap out of your team, but we're also going to put on a show and make you laugh and have a good time.
Right, i.e. the Indianapolis Clowns, which they were pretty much known for that kind of stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. Yep.
So, as you started researching all this, what really stuck out as you kept finding all this information? And I know there's so many other guys who are doing all this, which is great, especially now.
Right.
Larry Lester and obviously Bob Kendrick from the Negro League Museum and.
There's this little group of maybe 12 or 15 people. I don't know Larry, but we have 1 degree of separation. I'm very good friends with Gary Ashwell, who lives in North Carolina. And this guy's kind of like the Michael Jordan of box score research and sort of troubleshooting issues that you have with it. And Gary and I have been very good friends for 10 to 12 years. And kind of teamed up, and a lot of the data that Gary has researched and that I've rebuilt is posted on the seamheads.com website for now. And then, eventually this stuff is going to probably end up at baseballreference.com, and it's going to be part of the official Major League record, at some point in the near future. So, what's to answer your question, what stood out to me, kind of getting back to the book, is the idea that there was this entire other universe of professional ball players who were making a living and drawing sometimes 10, 20, 25,000 people out to their games on the weekends that we know very little about.
Right.
That it's the House of David team. That's the Canadian Clowns and the Tokyo Giants, and it's really, really, it's like out of a novel. It's out of a really bizarre novel. These novelty teams that would travel around, and they all had kind of a different shtick, but they were very good ball players. The other thing, Mitch, that's really, really fascinating, if you go back to sort of the ragtime era, the 1905, 1910, was that, there was no free agency. So you were pretty much the property of a major league team. And a lot of times, major league players would use these semi-pro teams as leverage to negotiate higher contracts. There's a couple of cases where Mike Donlin, who was a really great hitter for the New York Giants, he left the game for 2 years and went and played for a semi-pro team in Chicago because he was getting paid a lot of money, and he only had to play about 3 or 4 games a week. Nixie Callahan was another longtime major leaguer. They both just took a break and went and for 2 or 3 years played semi-pro ball, made a ton of money, and then they ended up going back to the major leagues. And so when they were playing semi-pro ball, they were playing against Rube Foster and the black teams.
Right.
Huge crowds, huge rivalries, and they would use it as leverage. I know Ty Cobb was in a dispute with the Detroit Tigers around the same time. He saw what Donlin and Callahan were doing and said, you know what, I'm going to go play in Chicago. I can just stay in one city the whole summer. I'm going to make a pretty good dollar. And he was able to negotiate a higher salary for himself using the semi-pro. That's what I call outsider baseball, is leverage, which was really fascinating to me, and I don't think a lot of people have realized that or have written about it.
No, I actually haven't. It's the first time I'm hearing it about, using that leverage, which is very interesting. And I've told folks, for a year and a half I've been doing the show, once I started getting involved with Negro Leagues and understanding what it was about, that, I never knew they really existed until maybe just even a few years ago. I may have heard about it in some way, shape, or form through looking at memorabilia. But my complaint is, and for me, again, this is just me, I wasn't a very good student, right? No, but I didn't really like history. Didn't like it at all. But if there had been any information in the history books when we were talking about segregation in the 20s, 30s, and 40s and 50s, and there had been some information in there about the Negro Leagues and what these guys had to go through, And then all of a sudden, Jackie comes through, and the Negro Leagues are basically gone. And why did that happen? And what about all the entrepreneurship that went on with black owners and black entrepreneurs at that time? I would have sure
Right.
been a hell of a lot more interested in history of that information than I ever was. So
Yeah, no, you make a good point. I mean, that's probably going to be one of the benefits, obviously, is that this is on the verge of being forgotten. And now it's going to permanently be hosted alongside the white major leagues, treated as equal. And so for future generations that are interested in baseball, sort of poking around, looking up stats for Babe Ruth or Ted Williams, you're going to bump into the Negro Leagues, and you're going to be exposed to another 3,400 men who played from 1920 to 48 in black leagues that have just about been forgotten. And that's going to change now.
yeah. So
which is
what
a
was
good
your
thing.
yeah, Scott? What was your reaction when this came out? I mean, I was like, "What?" And
Yeah,
were you
I
surprised? Did you know it was coming? What do you?
Well, I have been talking behind the scenes, so I had a hunch. Well, I knew that they were seriously considering it, and for several months leading up to it, I did not even know until the day before that they had decided to go ahead and do this. I had a hunch that it was going to happen. I had a lot of conversations with John Thorne, who's the official historian of Major League Baseball, and we've become very close. So I was part of those conversations behind the scenes, but I will be honest, when I found out, which was the night before, I teared up a little bit, which I'm not that kind of a guy. I just, because I never thought this would happen. It really wasn't our goal. We just, as historians, we just wanted to record what had happened.
Right.
Make it available for free online for people who can find it, which is kind of hard to find because it's not one of the most well-known baseball sites, but that's all going to change. And I actually teared up. I just kind of thought of my dad, who had, the first game he ever went to was in 1947, Wrigley Field, with my grandfather. He was my dad was probably 9 years old, and the place was sold out. My grandpa had to give the police officer like $5, and he kind of snuck him in on Waveland Avenue in the left field bleachers, and they watched Jackie Robinson make his debut in Chicago in '47.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
wow.
my grandfather was a semi-pro ball player in the 20s and 30s in Chicago, and he had played against the Cuban Stars from the Negro Leagues. And I remember as a kid hearing the stories. I mean, that's the kind of house I grew up in. You talk about you not liking history. I grew up in a house where everybody talked about history and baseball, and we loved it. And so they're not here to see what's happening, and so I think that's why it caught me a little bit by surprise emotionally.
No, and listen, I thought you were going the way you were talking about it, and as passionate as you are, I was not surprised that they did, because all of these, and again, the contacts that people that are still out there, former players,
Yep.
few and far between, but they're still out there, and mostly they're the son, maybe some sons, daughters, and mostly a lot of grandkids. I mean, Sean Gibson.
Yep. Yeah, good guy.
With Josh. I mean, terrific. Just, yes,
I have,
getting the word out.
I mean, you bring up a good point. You only have 4 players left who played in '48 or sooner, or before that. But there's dozens who played in the '50s. But you're right, it's the grandkids, the children. I have met a number of them over the past 10 to 12 years, and there's just something special. They're reconnecting with a part of their own family history that they were unaware of or didn't know details, and it's astonishing. I know Gary, my buddy, has had the same experience with family members, and there's something important about that. We all want to have pride in who we are and where we come from, and this is important because in this country we have done a horrible job, of documenting African American history. I mean.
Right.
We're getting better, but as we know from the last 4 years, things aren't where they're supposed to be. And so this is a nice step in the right direction. And I think there's, like I said, 3,400 players. There's 3,400 families, people that probably even right now, as you and I are speaking, do not realize they had a great-grandfather or somebody. They're going to discover that eventually. It's going to happen.
It is. And it's awesome. So what do you think the plans are? So it's going to be out there. So what is the plan, Scott? Do you know? And it's unfortunate that we weren't unable to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues in Major League Baseball last year, but I know they're planning on doing it again this year, hopefully.
Yep.
Do we know what would be a great way? I mean, listen, you want to connect with kids, obviously. Baseball is losing young fans anyway. So, are there any plans, specific plans, do you know of how to get the word out about this? I know that Lauren Meyer has developed the other Boys of Summer documentary, and that's one way.
Okay.
I'm trying to do something with that with the school that I work with. But now that this has become much bigger in a
Yeah, yeah.
how
I don't.
how can that happen?
I don't.
How can we do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know that this process is going to be, it's not going to be overnight. We're having conversations with Major League Baseball and Elias about how to integrate the data. And what there's a lot of issues. You got to figure out which games are we going to keep and which ones are we going to discard because they're not official games.
Right.
We're obviously just going to focus on Negro League games. How do we sort of leverage this for awareness and celebration? That's stuff we got to figure out this year. I mean, I know that, like you said, Major League Baseball is going to have some other tributes to the Negro Leagues this year. I just think there's going to be some added heft to them that we can now talk about players and actually talk about their batting averages. We can talk about the team records. We know how many games they won and lost. We didn't know any of that stuff,
Right.
Or at least wasn't publicly available outside the little circle of nerds like me who really focus on it. So now we get to kind of make this part of the popular history. So I don't know. That's going to be fun. I think there's going to be a lot of really clever people, writers, journalists. The fact that you and I are talking about it right now is part of that. Okay, so this is part of getting it out.
Right.
It'll be fun. I mean, people are going to have fun. They're going to have access to the data. They're
Oh my
going to
gosh, yeah.
news stories and books. And you talk about, the other Boys of Summer. That kind of stuff is going to be part of what makes this important and helps spread this around the country.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny, we're talking tonight, and I had ordered some Negro League baseballs from somebody on eBay, and they came in today. Rube Foster is one of them I got in front of
Yep.
Lester Lockett from the Baltimore Elite Giants.
Yep.
Ray Dandridge. Judy Johnson. Yep.
Yep.
Max Manning, who I hadn't heard of before.
Yeah, he's a pitcher. Pitched in the 40s with the Newark Eagles. Yeah, really good pitcher.
And of course, Judson Wilson, I hadn't heard of either.
Yeah, Judd Wilson. Yeah, he's in the Hall of Fame. The guy played from about 1920 to 48. Spent a lot of time with the Baltimore Black Sox in the 20s, and then he was with the Homestead Grays on the back end of his career. So he played with Josh Gibson,
right,
and Buck Leonard, and he is in the Hall of Fame. And probably one of the top 10 hitters of all time. But he's not well known. And I think he's going to be 2 years from now where everyone's going to probably, oh yeah, Judd Wilson, he's one of the top hitters of all time.
Yes, it's just going to be cool. And then, of course,
it is cool.
Yeah, and Satchel, of course,
Yes.
It really is. It's just, and again, I'm not a young guy, but I have become more interested in this and passionate about this than I have besides the Phillies and regular baseball. Than I have about really anything. So it's really cool for me. And again, but I think more like we talked about the families of these players. It's finally getting this recognition, which is kudos to whoever, including yourself, was some of the reasons behind this actually happening. So, congratulations to you and to everybody else who's made this happen. Yeah, more books, more information could come out. And I think every kid, in I don't know, when would you understand segregation in baseball to minimally watch 42, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that way you get an idea. And you can go work backwards from there. In terms of the Negro Leagues, and even like you said, what your book starts out in the late 1800s. So it's really
right.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I would start out with Watch 42 if you're looking for a book to read. I hope people still read the books. I wouldn't start with mine. I would start with Only the Ball Was White by Robert Peterson, published in 1970. That's a great entry into this universe. And then Watch 42. And then you can start maybe look at my book somewhere after those two, and you're going to have a good sense of what this world was like, what the country was like, and what professional baseball was like before 1947.
Right.
And people's jaws are going to drop.
Yeah.
It's going to be, and it takes a lot of guts for Major League Baseball to do this. I know that there's a lot of cynicism, and probably justifiably so. Because of the timing, it was such a bad year last year in 2020 with social unrest and the Black Lives Matter movement, and I think that everybody wanted to say, hey, we need to do better. What can we do? And certainly this must have been a byproduct of that. But I think if you look at it from a positive point of view, it takes guts. It's going to be like wearing a scarlet letter for the rest of time. That now, when we look at major league records from 20 to 48, you're going to see two leagues that are completely white, and you're going to see two leagues that are all black and Latin players, and even a couple of Asians. And you're going to say, "Wow, look at this! This is what America was, man!" And it's right there.
Yeah,
and it's going to be there forever.
Exactly. Not to mention the three women who played in the Negro Leagues too.
Yeah. Now they're not going to. Tony Stone and Connie Morgan, and they played after the league was in decline, so they're not going to become part of the official record. But I think we'll certainly consider that AAA, and I think that they're going to become more prominent in the story, which is good.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's just terrific stuff. So, folks, if you haven't gotten it yet, as we were talking about. Scott also works for Seamheads. And Scott, real quickly, I got a couple of minutes to talk about what Seamheads is.
Sure. Well, Seamheads.com is a website, I believe, founded by Mike Lynch and Kevin Johnson, who are two good buddies of mine. And it was originally a place for kind of saber guys, historians, and researchers, a place for them to go and post their own research and stories. It's all baseball stuff. But it became the host of the Negro League database, and it's really cool graphics. If you go to Seamheads.com, you're going to see a portal that will lead you into the Negro League database, and you'll be able to see the stats of Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige and Judd Wilson and all these great players that you may not know a lot about. But it's a cool site. It's fun to poke around there. You're going to see great stories. You're going to see great stats and some stuff about ballparks, too.
Yeah, that's great. And the ballparks are also another piece of this, which we can, it's a whole other conversation. Right? So Outsider Baseball is the name of the book. I just found it on Amazon. You can go get it. I can't wait to look at it and read it. Heading for retirement in September. I have about 12 books I'm ready to read. They're sitting ready.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I can't wait. But that's one of them. It's coming. So, Scott, listen, thank you very much for taking the time. It was a pleasure to talk to you. As we go forward, perhaps, as we get into this season, knock on wood, fingers crossed, we get to have one. Yeah. We get to have a Negro Leagues Centennial +1 celebration. Maybe we'll cross paths again and have you back on and talk about it.
Mitch, thank you so much, man. You have a great day.
Thank you very much, Scott. Take care.
Bye-bye.
So, very interesting information from Scott about the new impact. What can it be? What will it be? Maybe what should it be on MLB, Major League Baseball, incorporating the Negro League stats up until 1947, I believe, 47. And more stories, more people able to learn about some history of this country through the ability of Major League Baseball and Negro League Baseball basically to come together and develop a relationship that everybody who's a baseball lover and a historian can appreciate. So next we're going to get into, we're going to go back to Eagles football. This will be Brendan's last appearance on the show. And I think it's going to be a fun one. It's going to be real fun because I think I'm going to let him rant for a while. We've done this before, obviously, but this kind of the last straw. For as you heard me before with Scott with Dougie Peterson. Brendan, are you there? Hello? Hold on, Brendan. Hello, Brendan.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. What's going on? How's your day been?
Oh, day's been good. I haven't started back to school yet, so I'm painting this week, painting a room and just relaxing somewhat. Um, I know. Wow, it's been. Listen, for me, it was entertaining on Sunday. Um, But wow, did things blow up yesterday, Brendan? Wasn't this fun to listen to? To happen?
Oh,
What
the
was your
past 48
reaction?
hours have been, well, I guess just under 2 days have been pretty nuts.
So,
For a
Brendan,
team that's four 11-1, that finished the season 4-11-1, they are dominating the news lines.
it
It's
is
unbelievable.
absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. So,
Yeah.
what was your thought on when you saw Sudfeld coming in? What was your thought?
I knew it was going to happen. They said they were doing it. Like it wasn't like they openly told reporters, like it was reported by Mike Garofalo before the game, that they were going to put Sudfeld in the game at some point. Now, no one, only Eagles fans and certain people that follow the team knew that. But I think it was more of the fact of how they did it. Like it was a 3-point game, and the game was definitely well within reach, and then they decided to put in Nate Sudfeld. That's why everyone's mad, right? Which is kind of the way they went about it. Like let's say Doug Peterson and Howie Roseman, like they knew they were going to do this before. This was not like Doug Peterson just decided to do this on the sideline. Like this was pre-planned. They should have just went out into the media and told them on like a news conference, or they should have just been open about it, saying, "Hey, we're going to put Sudfeld in the fourth quarter." That's it. That's all they had to do, right? All they had to do was just be open and honest before the game. Maybe like on Saturday or Friday, and just tell everyone like what their plan was, and then no one would have freaked out because everyone knew it was coming. It was more of just a surprise factor of it in a 3-point game report, pulling Hurts, putting Sudfeld. But I already knew it was coming. I knew they were going to do it, and I've been on the side of this was completely the right thing to do for this organization going forward. They need the 6th overall pick, in my opinion. I think nothing that they could have done in that game would affect them more than going up 3 picks, going from the 9th to the 6th. So I no, I'm being honest. Like
I know you are.
Yeah, this team's severely lacks young talent, and the 6th overall pick is it's nothing like that's worth taking for. Like to go from the 6th to 9th, that's about on like the value of a 2nd round pick basically. And I would tank all day in the week 17 to get a free 2nd round pick. So.
Okay, so here's the other part of this on Sports Radio WIP this morning. Okay, on Jalen Hurts sitting, Miles Sanders said, I don't know if you read this, man. If I'm being honest, this is quoting. If I'm being honest, nobody liked the decision. Nobody. That's all I can really say. I don't know who was the main person behind that decision. All I know is that a lot of people on the team was confused. End quote. So,
well, Miles Sanders wasn't even on the sidelines. First of all, he wasn't even playing the game. And Brandon Graham came out after the game and said he knew they were going to do it. A couple other players, Fletcher Cox, knew about it. So, like, I don't really. There's some disconnect here. You know what I mean? Like, you got guys like Miles Sanders saying people are pissed, and then you got guys like Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox who knew about it. I don't really know. I don't really know what to make of this whole drama. It's kind of crazy.
well, and again, this is the problem with Doug. Okay, if in fact it wasn't communicated to everybody, which it sounds like, we don't
Exactly.
know.
Yeah. No.
We're hearing it, right?
Exactly.
Jeff,
That's what it sounds like.
it sounds like. So if you look at it and break it down, if he didn't tell everybody, and you saw the reactions on the sideline, and you saw of Jalen Hurts, number one, and number two, supposedly 2 players were going up and trying to get to Peterson about the decision. And if he makes this decision, and not everybody knows about it. That to me loses a locker room, loses respect, and Jeff Lurie needs to have sent to him, sat him down and said, did everybody know this? And if they didn't, and it sounds like they didn't, then for the betterment of this team, Jeff Lurie should have fired Doug Peterson today.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't think this was a Doug Peterson thing. I think this was Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie telling Doug Peterson to, at some point today, or some point in this game, put Nate Sudfeld in and pull Jalen Hurts. We need the 6th pick. Like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that this was coming from the top.
However,
you're right. However, I think, again, the way that Doug Peterson did this was wrong. Again, and this is coming from someone that wanted to tank. I think what he did and how he did it was wrong. But the overall game plan of putting a Sudfeld, I'm fine with. It's just how we went about it. And you're right. There's definitely some sort of disconnect here. However, and I've reiterated this all day and yesterday. This is probably the 25th dumbest thing this organization has done all year. This doesn't even crack the top 20 for me. They have done a lot more idiotic things all year, have done dumber decisions in the front, or have made dumber decisions in the front office all year, and from the coaching staff as well. So that's where I'm at. Like, I'm already, like, my mind's already like, they should have fired Doug and fired Howie already. This does not change my mind. That's what I want. Like, I just think that everyone's making such a big deal about this and haven't looked at the roster moves and the coaching decisions that they made all year and realized that this is not even a big deal compared to what they've actually done all year.
Right. So, in essence, what we're intimating is that if Doug doesn't get fired, it's because, you know what, he just went along with the plan.
He's not getting fired. I think he would have been fired by now. I think they're rolling it back. I think they're running back Doug and Howie. Like, if you take a look at right now, teams are already requesting for coaching interviews, right?
Yep.
Like, you already can see like, so if they were to fire Doug, they're way behind the 8 ball now. Like, they're behind all the other teams that are looking for coaches. So usually, it's very rarely you see a coach get fired after Tuesday of week 17.
Right.
Usually they fire them on Monday or Tuesday so that they can start interviewing coaches and get the process going fast. The Eagles haven't done that yet, so I have a very hard time seeing, like, and I'm not 100% sure this. I don't have any sources or anything, so don't quote me on this. But I think that's what's going to happen, just from the simple fact of again, it's the process of hiring a coach. However, we have no idea what's going to happen from here going forward. Like, this whole thing could get worse. We don't. Right. I don't know. So maybe it does. Maybe something happens.
But your theory about coming down from the top makes sense if he doesn't get fired. He was just, like I said, he was just told what to do. And he did.
Exactly.
And it happened at a crucial point because they were only 3 points down. They didn't kick a field goal, and those play calls, again, sucked. When they were first and goal on the 4-yard line. I mean, it was just ridiculous. All you had to do was let Jalen Hurts run the ball, and they score a touchdown. And he didn't do that. Yep. So at that point, he was tanking. So let's talk about the crybaby Giants fans. What are your thoughts about them?
Oh, it's ridiculous. Like, you guys, they finished season 6-10. Like, here's a thought. How about you don't finish the season 6-10 and have to rely on a 4-10-1 Philadelphia Eagles team to catapult you in the playoffs? How about you just win a couple more games? Like, they have no reason to complain whatsoever.
But the integrity of the game, Joe Judge, integrity of the game. How can you do this? This is not what the game is all about. We're trying to win. You should be trying to win every game. Blah 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 blah.
It's all crap.
Can you say that again for the Giants fans?
Giants fans, you should not be mad at Eagles fans, straight up, if you're listening. Like, again, going back to this, like, this was the best thing that could happen for its organization, was getting the 6th overall pick. That is the only thing that should have been on their mind heading into week 17, unfortunately. That's how far they've come, right? Like, that's really what they're banking on, right? Like, but it's true. Like, the number 6 overall pick can get you a stud player, and they need that. So nothing that would have happened on week 17 should have changed that.
Howie's lucky at 6 because it is hard to. Don't you think it's kind of hard to screw up a 6, right? I mean, you're talking about the top 6 players in the country. How can you? Well, he's messed his shit. Pardon me, I shouldn't say the 4-letter word. He messed the crap up before. And you look at, and you just look at Rager, and you look at Justin Jefferson, and you look at DK, and you look at, again, we talked about this before. He has screwed up so many draft picks and drafts. Okay, so you and I could go in blind and pick this number 6 pick, but it's the ones after that. It's the needles in the haystack that other teams seem to find, and the Eagles can't.
Yeah, and that's why Eagles fans maybe should be actually happy this happened. Because let's say they did get the 9th pick, there is a risk that they're taking the wrong guy, or there's a chance of messing that up, right? Yeah. So Eagles fans should be like if they're pissed at Howie Roseman, they should be happy he got the 6th pick, because that's then it's harder for him to screw up, if that makes sense.
Well, it is. Yeah. But there are other theories out there that maybe because they need so many more players, on the roster and key positions, he'll trade that one down for a couple more other ones in different rounds.
Yeah, there's a risk of that. I think there's only one thing that they should do in this draft, and with the 6th overall pick, is there's 2 wide receivers out there right now. Devonta Smith, who's probably going to win the Heisman Trophy tonight,
right?
And Jamar Chase. Those 2 receivers, in my opinion. I don't know this 100% sure. I'd have to kind of maybe take a look back at other draft classes. But in my my memory of following college football and following the NFL, these are 2 of the best wide receiver prospects coming out in a very long time. These are 2 wide receivers where you can't and it's almost impossible to screw them up. One's a Heisman Trophy winner, and Jamar Chase last year at the age of 19 years old put up better numbers than Devonta Smith is doing right now. Jamar Chase opted out this year so he can play, so you don't have the big body of work like Devonta Smith does. But these 2 guys are studs, and in my opinion, the Eagles should only be focusing on those 2. I think Jamar Chase is going to go number 5 to Cincinnati, and then Devonta Smith should be there at 6, and you take him. You have to get this wide receiver position figured out. It's enough's enough already.
So yeah, let me go back into that, Brendan. So 1 through 4. We know who's going 1.
Yeah.
So 2 through 3, 2, 3, and 4. Who's drafting? Is it Jacksonville 2?
So Jacksonville's 1. You got the Jets 2.
2.
Third is Miami, because they have the Houston Texans pick. What an awful trade that was for Houston. Yeah. And then number 4 is Atlanta. 5 is Cincinnati, and then you got Philly at 6.
So you think one of those 2 will still be available?
I do. I think. Well, I don't know this for sure, but I'm assuming Justin Fields is going to go ahead at least one more quarterback. And as Eagles fans should be praying Justin Fields lights it up in the national championship game, because if you're an Eagles fan, basically what you're rooting for is as many quarterbacks drafted in the first 5 picks. No, because then then you get the other position.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I know where you're going. Yeah.
Yeah, so you want as many quarterbacks taken. So you want Justin Fields to light it up on the national championship. So a team will take him 2nd or 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever. And then you want Zach Wilson of BYU. He's probably the only other quarterback that I'm assuming will go in the top 6. There's Trey Lance as well from North Dakota State. So he potentially could go. He's the 4th quarterback. It depends. It's all teams are going to fall in love with different guys. Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, and Trey Lance. I think those 3 are closer than people think, and teams are probably going to fall in love with certain ones. But just in general, you want as many quarterbacks to go in the top 5. Atlanta at 4 is probably going to take a quarterback. That's my best guess. They're
right.
And then the Jets is the big wild card here. You want the Jets to take a quarterback, or you want them to trade out of that pick to take a quarterback. Because if they take Penei Sewell, who is the number 1 offensive tackle rated right now, then Miami's sitting at 3. And there's talk that Miami's going to go for a quarterback. I don't think they're going to do that.
Okay.
I think they stay to par, and they'll probably take a wide receiver, Devonta Smith or Jamar Chase, if say the Jets don't. Then you're at 4. Then Atlanta will probably take Justin Fields at 4. Then 5, and that's the biggest worry, because Jamar Chase played with Joe Burrow at LSU. Right. So they're either going to want to take him, and Tua played with Devonta Smith at Alabama. Right. So you have Miami and Cincinnati wanting to pair their young quarterbacks with the receivers they play with. Then that's the worst possible scenario, is the Jets take Penei Sewell too.
Listen,
I don't think that's going to happen.
You don't think it's going to happen? Okay.
No, I think they either draft Justin Fields if Fields lights it up in the national championship game, and let's say he beats Alabama or puts up a good fight against Alabama. I think there's a good chance that he goes number 2 to the Jets or they trade him. So that's the way I look at it. And I think there's like a 95% chance that one of those wide receivers are going to be there at 6, and then the Eagles take them. And then look, then you got something cooking at least with offensive weapons. You got Goddard, Sanders, Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, and Jalen Reagor. You have something to look forward to as an Eagles fan on offense. But again, a lot can happen between now and then.
Well, yeah, and obviously the other big issue is, Carson. I mean, is what we've been reading about the relationship, is it fractured? Doug has said, and it's funny the way he words it. He words it by saying, "Yeah, we want to get this thing fixed." Is he underscoring these fixed in terms of his quarterback play? That's what he wants people to believe, or from what we're hearing about the relationship? Because listen, if you really dissect it, and we've done this all season, he hasn't been good, and he hasn't had the ability to be protected, number 2, and no receivers, number 3, basically, right? But so then you look at, and we've talked about this all year, the play calling. He leaves him in the pocket. How can you leave him in the pocket with an offensive line that stinks? That's Doug. We talked about that. How do you not roll him out as the other side of that coin and make your quarterback successful? And you got to believe that Wentz is so pissed off at Doug for putting him in those situations. And Doug never veered. Did Wentz not talk up? Did he not speak up and say, Doug, listen, here's the deal. The offensive, I'm getting sacked. I'm getting killed. Can you roll me out? I'd like to roll out. I'd like to do some more. Why didn't that happen? So it's just, then that breeds the next question, Brendan. Who do they pick next? Who do they go after next? If you look at the offensive line and then you look at the cornerbacks, right? What are they going to do after this? After they pick 6, what are they going to do?
I think you got to go corner. I think corner and receiver are clearly the 2 biggest needs. You could make the argument they could go anywhere. Like I wouldn't go quarterback. I think this offseason should not be focused on finding a young quarterback. Figure out what you got with Wentz and Hurts, and then maybe 2022 you go back to quarterback drawing board. Who knows? Again, and you brought up the Carson Wentz thing. I want to quickly say this. I don't see a scenario where Doug Peterson is the play caller of the Eagles and head coach, and Carson Wentz is the quarterback for 2021. I don't see that as a possible scenario. I think either the only way that Doug Peterson is back with Carson Wentz is if the Eagles bring on some young, exciting, young offensive mind and put him at offensive coordinator and basically have this guy take care of Wentz from now on. There's a name being thrown around, Graham Harrell. He's the offensive coordinator of the USC Trojans. The Eagles interviewed him last year for their offensive coordinator job, and he ended up declining it because he wanted play calling, and Doug had wanted to keep play calling. So he's like, screw this. I'm not becoming an offensive coordinator of a place I can't call plays. That doesn't make any sense. I'm going back to USC. So I in my opinion, I personally think that's where they're going to look first, because they need an offensive coordinator, and I think that's where they go. And if that happens, maybe this young Graham Harrell kid can take Carson under his wing. I don't know. Or he wants Jalen Hurts. Graham Harrell runs the air raid offense. Air raid is is kind of the new trend in football, in college, and the pros. It's what Cliff Kingsbury runs in Arizona. Okay. So I think maybe that's what Hurts ran in Oklahoma, and he's really good with it. Maybe that's something Wentz can fix. I don't know. But they're going to have to bring in some sort of young offensive mind to pair with Wentz. If Doug's the play caller and the coach next year, Wentz is gone. There's no way you can do that. I don't see a scenario where you can have them both back.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, again, we only know what we hear, and obviously we're not in the mix. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see as we go forward what Carson's future is going to be. Does it depend upon what Doug does? Does it depend upon if Jeff Lurie says, "Listen, Doug, you sucked at play calling, so we're going to bring somebody else in," does Doug say, "Sorry, see you later, bye," or um, and then Wentz is like, "Okay, well that's cool. It's going to be fun. Let's just put it this way: we know it's going to be fun to watch, and we see what happens with this stuff, right? Like it's good,
Yeah.
like it's going to be this weekend." Are you looking this weekend, Brendan?
Sorry, what'd you say?
Are you looking forward to this weekend?
Oh, I can't wait. I'm so excited for playoffs. I think this year has the most potential of any playoffs in a very long time. I think there's a lot of good teams this year compared to other years. Like, I know you have the Bears and Washington in. Those are probably the two worst teams. But besides those two, I think you can make the argument that any single team in the playoffs has a legitimate shot at making a run. Like, you got Baltimore Ravens right now; they're red hot. That's a team I wouldn't want to play.
Yeah,
I've been high on the Colts a lot more than others. I still think they're one of the most complete teams in the league. They've beaten Green Bay. They've done well, and I think that's a tough first game for Buffalo, for instance. And Buffalo is a great team, right? So I think there's many teams. I think the entire AFC is wide open.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Kansas City is probably the best team, but again, they are 0-8 against the spread in the last 8 games, so they're not blowing teams out by any means. They've been a lot of close games, so I think the AFC is wide open. On the NFC side of the ball, I think it's Green Bay's conference to lose. Still, I know they lost David Bakhtiari last week, but I think Aaron Rodgers and that offense is just out of playing out of their minds right now. So I think the NFC is probably run by Green Bay, and in the AFC, your guess is as good as mine in the AFC. I don't know. I'm excited to see how it all plays out.
I'm real excited. I mean, I was looking up. I mean, I haven't seen Indianapolis a lot this year on television, but when you look at the quarterback comparison numbers, I mean, Philip Rivers had a great year.
Yeah, he was one of the most underrated quarterbacks all year. I've been singing his praise. I've been singing his praise in my podcast. I've been singing his praise all year. I think he deserves a lot more credit for what he's done in Indianapolis this year.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm thinking that you're right. Could Indianapolis win this Saturday? Absolutely. I'm rooting for Buffalo because I like Josh Allen. I like the way these guys have played, and they haven't won in eons, right? With the Rams in Seattle, I just don't think that Rams are. I think they're a mediocre 10-6, where Seattle's above average 12-4.
It's all going to be depending on I don't know if Goff's going to play or not. They haven't. I don't know if there's been much out the first Monday, Tuesday about it, but we'll probably talk more tomorrow. I don't know if John Wolford's going to be able to lead the Rams past the Seahawks. Yeah. So I think it's a lot's going to depend on the Falcons.
That's true. Tampa Bay. I mean, listen. Here's the scary part that we none of us want to see is Tom Brady win a game, but they are playing their best. I think they're playing their best football now, and I think it's due to him because he's obviously been there a lot. And Washington has no shot against Tampa Bay. So, and then you got Kansas City. So, if it were up to me, I would love to see a Kansas City Buffalo championship game.
Yep, I agree.
And then on Sunday, you know what? Again, don't you think Tennessee's underrated?
Quickly back to Tampa, Washington. I don't call me crazy here, but I think this is a really bad matchup for Tampa Bay. Tom Brady doesn't have a lot of ability to. I think it's a terrible matchup for them. I'm not saying Washington's a better team. Yeah. I think if Washington has got a shot at beating one team in the NFC, I think Tampa Bay might be it. Tampa Bay is they need protection in the pocket for Brady for their offense to have any success. Washington's got a lot of talent on that defensive line, and they've got enough talent that can kind of muck the game up. So, and then again, Washington's offense is really bad, so I don't really know. Yeah. But I just think it's a bad matchup for Tampa Bay in general. And then, sorry, what was your question?
Well, I was just talking about going into the NFC with the game of Baltimore and Tennessee.
The Titans Ravens, yeah. So my Super Bowl pick before the year was the Baltimore Ravens. I had the Ravens facing the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl, and they're both still alive, so potentially, but they were both wild card teams, so that's probably not going to happen. But I think Baltimore is the one team in the playoffs, if I was a top contender, that I don't want to face right now. They've won 5 games in a row. They're red hot. They have a pissed off Lamar Jackson, and they're playing a team that knocked them out last year, right? Tennessee knocked up last year. They're definitely going to want some revenge there. I like Baltimore as of right now. I'm starting my previews and my props articles tomorrow. I decided I'm going to go into this with an open mind on Wednesday, and just kind of break and start my research and stuff on Wednesdays. Try to go with an open mind and not already have my pick before. So I'm excited to kind of break down all these games. I'm looking forward to the next few days.
I don't think Chicago has a shot against New Orleans. Do you?
I don't. I think the Saints are coming back healthy. You got Michael Thomas coming back off IR. Alvin Kamara is coming back off the COVID list. Yeah. I think they handle Chicago.
And then I'd love to see Cleveland beat Pittsburgh. I mean, Pittsburgh, I think it's a week 12-4 only because of their schedule. They haven't really beaten a good team. They went to a little bit of a down swirl 3 or 4 weeks ago. Lost 2 in a row. Won the week after. No Roethlisberger, but of course nobody bitched about no Roethlisberger this weekend. But I love to see Cleveland and Baker Mayfield make a run here just for Cleveland.
Yeah, I feel bad for Cleveland. Like Kevin Stefanski, their head coach, can't coach today. Kind of feel bad for them. They're going to be a tough spot. Losing their head coach is a big deal, in my opinion. Like I think it's a big loss. And Stefanski's done such a great job there in Cleveland. He's my coach of the year pick if I had a vote. That's a tough loss, but yeah, I would love to see Cleveland move on. My two teams I want to see win are Cleveland and Buffalo.
Me too.
I'm cheering for any teams. I'm from the Toronto area, so Buffalo is kind of like my hometown team. I've seen a couple of Bills games, been up to Buffalo a couple of times. Great atmosphere there. Some of the best fans in the league are in Buffalo, so I have a soft spot for that team. So I'll be cheering for them. And then of Cleveland. My work is in Cleveland, so I travel to Cleveland once every year.
Okay.
To go there. So familiar with the area. Browns fans deserve a lot better. I have a lot of friends up in Cleveland too, so they're my team.
Cool. Yeah, and then then you talk about Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. Holy crap! I mean, this guy is just pretty amazing. It's gonna be tough to stop him. It's good. Let's face it. It's gonna be tough to stop Green Bay. With all those weapons. But listen. It's going to be just fun this weekend, sitting down in front of the television and watching back to back, isn't it? It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's great. I can't wait.
Do you have any parting words for Giants fans as we continue to talk about this complaining wah attitude, the crying of you guys didn't play where you're supposed to, now we can't be in the playoffs?
I got nothing left to say for Giants fans. I've already expressed myself on Twitter and in my podcast. I've already said it. And again, like the Joe Judge thing, it's like you're the head coach of a 6-10 team, and you're going out in the media and you're getting mad at other teams for not playing hard. Like you're 6-10. Worry about yourself.
Exactly. Geez, maybe we should have won a couple more games. Yeah, that would have been.
Yeah, exactly.
We wouldn't have to be talking about this.
Exactly.
All right, Brendan. Listen. Everybody out there who's listening, I need you to right now clap for Brendan. Brendan, it has been amazing for you to be able to commit to this for me. I really appreciate it so much that you've been able to come on every week, lend your expertise and your emotion and your passion. I just enjoyed I just couldn't wait to talk to you every Tuesday. So I really appreciate you doing this. Enjoy the playoffs. And listen, I'll be watching your tweets, and I'll tweet back at you, and we'll take it from there.
Sounds good, Mitch. Thanks again for having me on all year. You had a great year. Great talking to you. I wish we had more positive things to talk about all year, but hey, it is what it is. And after the playoffs, so let's talk again.
Okay, that sounds great, Brendan. Hey, continue to be safe. Enjoy your weekend. A lot of people out there need to get on with Brendan at Brendan Deeg. Is it NFP? Is that what it is?
Everyone else has left the call.
Oops. Get on there with Brendan and thank him for doing this with me. It's been great. So Giants fans, you heard it. Stop complaining. Stop crying. Why you keep crying? Do what the hell you want. I don't care. It is what it is. The Eagles lost. They didn't do it because of you. They wanted the draft pick, no doubt. It probably came down, good theory from Brendan, that it came down from Howie and Jeff. We need the sixth pick. Let's ensure that. Doug, do what you have to do to ensure that. And he did it. He listened to the owners. The backside of that is what we talked about, is if not everybody knew, then that's on Doug, and he needs to be held accountable for that. And who knows if Jeff Lurie will. So that's enough Eagles talk with Brendan. We're going to take a 2-minute break, 2-minute commercial break, and then we'll come back, talk a little bit of more NFL, and wait for our third guest, Jeff Warren from the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show, to talk a little bit more about his thoughts on the Eagles, what happened this weekend, and a little bit on the Phillies. So we're going to take a break.
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money, and we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
At Amazon, we're pretty good at getting things done. We're pretty good at solving problems. COVID-19 is the biggest challenge we've had to face. But challenges are what motivate us. Like flying masks to our employees around the world. We're doing everything we can to get you what you need, and doing everything we can to keep our people safe. I'm former Navy pilot Sarah Rhodes, and I'm proud to lead our Amazon Air network.
And welcome back to the Burn with Mitch on 12 Ounce Sports Network. We're going to be continuing with our third guest in just a few minutes, but I wanted to give you a rundown of Captain Lou coming up at 8 o'clock on 12 Ounce Sports and Zingo TV channel 761. So Captain Lou will be talking about, obviously, the NFL playoffs and Wild Card Weekend, like we just talked about with Brendan. And he's also going to be talking about the college football championship game. At 8:30, Ryan Fowler of At Leading NFL will be on talking about the NFC, followed by Jarrett Bailey of SI Now, Sports Illustrated Now, at 9 o'clock talking about the AFC playoffs. And at 9:30, he'll be joined by Jensen Riffle, I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, talking about the Detroit Lions and the Lou's team. And then Lou will have his last installment of the Captain Lou Six-Pack Challenge. And he wanted to let people know that, interestingly enough, Michigan high school football playoffs return this weekend. So I guess they had to take a break, and they're coming back this weekend. So Lou will be talking a little bit about that. As I mentioned last week, because it's a new year, I'd like to get some input about what you think sports should be like in 2021. So I'm looking for responses to this question, and we'll post this on the Burn with Mitch Twitter account. Looking for responses to this question: what changes do you need to see in sports in 2021, assuming all gets back to normal? And my example was, i.e., the DH in baseball. We talked about the DH last year. It was there, and then now they're not doing it this year. But what should they do? So what do you think? Tweet at the Burn Mitch, and with your suggestions, and I'll read them on the air. And we'll have some giveaways for those who contribute to that conversation. Also, coming up in the new year, we are going to, like I said, we're going to add some videos so you can see my lovely face. And at some point, we will have the guests on video, which will be a lot more beneficial for all of us. I believe the listeners, it's always fun to see somebody's face and talk as you're talking. So we're going to get that done. But guests coming up include the following people: author Eric Sherman, artist Margie Lawrence, sports artist Margie Lawrence, and other artist Margie Lawrence. Margie does a lot of different things, not just sports. 76ers TV play-by-play man Mark Zumoff, sports psychologist Dr. Joel Fish, former MLB pitcher Rick Sutcliffe, Bruce Markison, education director coordinator for the Baseball Hall of Fame, will also be on. And to get ready for baseball season, we are going to do a roundup of shows in February and March with most likely the National League. And I'm finding and scheduling beat reporters from every National League team, West, Central, and the East, to come on and give their take on the other upcoming season. So we're looking forward to that. That'll be a lot of fun. That'll be like a 20-minute conversations around the board for an entire 2-hour show to get everybody ready for the season, if I can make that work. In addition, Bianca Smith, who was just hired as the Boston Red Sox as an African American woman who will be coaching in their minor league system, first African American female in baseball. So I've reached out to her and the Red Sox, and the hope is to get her on the show at some point soon too. So a lot of fun, a lot of great guests coming on, and also segments every week as best I can on sports collectibles and sports cards. It's a huge community on Twitter, and so many folks doing so many things. We're going to get some of the biggest collectors out there to come on the show and talk about what they see for the hobby coming up, and what maybe get some giveaways going. So we'll see what we can do. We'll get them on board. So looking forward to all that fun stuff coming up in the following year. Excuse me. I'll take a sip of water and get ready for Jeff Lauren from the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show. So Jeff, I think what we'll do is we'll start. Well, we'll ask him. We'll ask him what he wants to start with. We want to start Eagles, or we want to go with a little bit of Phillies, because we'll focus more on the Eagles for sure. Because that's the fun part right now. We can bash the Phillies too for not doing anything so far. With signing, they've signed 4 players to minor league contracts. Not really anybody to be excited about. Older players. That was just this past week. Nothing happening in the JT Realmuto sweepstakes, free agent JT. So we're hoping that things begin to start happening in free agency and Major League Baseball, because pitchers and catchers report, I believe it's February the 17th. So if you're looking at 17 days and 26 days, so looking at 43 days, pitchers and catchers. So I always do a countdown. I don't know about you, but I am doing a countdown for pitchers and catchers, and things need to happen, not just for the Phillies, but for a ton of people, a ton of teams going forward. So that's also going to be taking a look at. Also tonight, as Brendan mentioned, the Heisman Trophy winners will be announced. So we'll take a look at that, and we'll check on with Jeff whether when that in fact is announced. Looking at information right now, I know this. I think it was scheduled for 7:00. I don't know if any announcement has been made yet. So we'll Jeff comes on, we'll talk to him. If that thing comes through, we'll let people know what's going on with the Heisman Trophy winner for this year. So, okay, let's see. I'm on here looking to see, nothing going on yet. Just waiting. Watch live. Oh, here comes Jeff.
Press 1. To send a voicemail, press.
Good evening, Jeff. How are you? This is Mitch. Thanks for calling.
Hey, how are you, Mitch? Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's great to have you. So, Jeff, how should we go about this?
Well, however you want, man. It's your show.
Do we want to do like a few minutes on the Phillies first? And JT and what we think is going to happen or should happen to Kingery and that kind of stuff, or do you want to go right into the Eagles? What do you think?
Oh, dude, however you want to do it. I mean, I would think because the Eagles were just coming off the season, it's probably the storylines that are most on people's minds, and then maybe we kind of just tail off with some Phillies talk.
Okay,
that
sounds
that's
good.
What I think.
So, I just talked to Brendan. Brendan Deeg and I have been talking all year about this team.
Oh, yeah.
Dougie's play calling, horrendous. The way he used Wentz when things weren't working, he was getting sacked. The way he stopped using Miles Sanders and what happened to Fulgham. I mean, Dougie was a disaster from the get-go. What are your thoughts?
I think when we reflect on this season, Mitch, in so many different ways, it all comes down to relationships and what has happened to those relationships and how those relationships manifested itself to the product that we saw on the field. So in terms of Doug Peterson, we obviously don't know, and we may know in the coming months, maybe the coming years, probably more the latter. In the coming years, we will know, of course, what happened behind the scenes here in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the relationships with the coaching staff, whether or not there were too many cooks in the kitchen, I think is a very valid point to be made for this 2020 season. This is Doug's offense. This is something that he has always said is it's his offense. And in fact, if you reflect on press conferences from this past year when he would be questioned on it and he would look extremely agitated in terms of, why he was being questioned. Again, I think it goes to there being perhaps too many cooks in the kitchen and consequently not paying enough attention to continued development of your quarterback. I don't care how long you've been in the league, aside possibly from being Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, but quarterbacks are constantly developing. Long-term quarterbacks still develop over time. And it seems that after Carson Wentz got that contract extension last year, it reminded me of what happened basically with Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers from years ago and the Packers organization when they just said, okay, you're Aaron Rodgers, get out there, do your thing. Take your first read, and after that, you're kind of on your own. And that's what it felt like. And whether or not that was specifically Doug's decision, because I do think that Doug does not make all the decisions here. I really don't believe he does. Now, did he make questionable decisions like you were saying throughout the season? Absolutely. When we're talking about misdirection, pre-snap motion, why wasn't it necessarily used for Carson Wentz, but then Jalen Hurts is put into this position over these last 4 games, and you see somewhat of a different mindset in terms of that pre-snap motion and misdirection. I think that Doug wasn't 100% making all the choices, and I think that's something they really need to figure out. They got a lot to figure out this offseason, Mitch, not just offensively, but defensively as well. I think that is going to be a huge part of where this offense moves forward because there's going to be a lot of changes, man.
There are. And here's the thing. So let's get into the controversy after the game, putting in Sudfeld, okay? Lots of talk out there, and I want you to later in a few minutes respond to the crybaby Giants fans. But it comes out that supposedly players knew that this was happening. Obviously, they probably didn't know when. Other players, Miles Sanders this morning on WIP, saying that, again, I read this quote to Brendan, man, if I'm being honest, nobody liked the decision. Nobody. That's all I can say, really. I don't know who was the main person behind that decision. All I know is that a lot of people on the team was confused. Quote, Miles Sanders. So if in fact, and then Brendan said, you know what? The guy had to have come from Howie and Jeff Lurie. So my whole thing was, if Doug did this and didn't, as you mentioned, relationships, he screwed up a lot of relationships. Even if he was told to do it and he didn't tell the players, and that's a heinous move. That's just ridiculous. To me, it's a fireable offense. But if it came down, no matter when it happened, to me, I want your thoughts from Jeff and Howie. Then he was just following directions.
Which I tend to think is correct. I tend to think the latter is correct. When you're talking about a number 6 overall pick and a number 9 overall pick, only 3 picks away from each other, but there can be in certain drafts, this one perhaps in particular, there can be some significance to that in terms of who you were targeting. So I do think that there was, and I think it's based on reporting too. Listen, everybody in Eagles Nation knew what this game was going to be going into it. We all knew. Now, again, we get into what you said and what I was saying earlier, the communication aspect of it, and how, because of where relationships are within this organization, within the coaching staff, and even within player to coach relationship, we have seen the degeneration of that, where maybe Miles Sanders, when he was on WIP, specifically was like, I had no idea what was going on. And perhaps Miles Sanders isn't a part of certain circles within the Eagles organization to know and understand what might be coming down the pike. So again, the relationships and who is making the decisions. At the end of the day, the people making the decisions are Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman. It is so incredibly... I don't necessarily think that Eagles Nation realizes the magnitude of how strong of a bond Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie have. Because when you go back to looking at this team over so many years, Mitch, the Eagles just have this constant theme of recycling players. And it's played out often, even since 2017. We can go to Vinny Curry, Jason Peters bringing him back, whether it's Darren Sproles as well. And it's also manifested itself into kind of laughable, bottom of the roster moves like the midseason addition of Jay Ajayi last year in 2019, or Josh McCown to the practice squad. Or how about poor Bruce Hector, the 100 transactions that he's been a part of. I mean, individually, none of these moves is worth getting upset about, but in the aggregate, they reflect the same kind of, quote, we know best mindset. And inevitably, Mitch, there are no new ideas in terms of player acquisition and development. That's why I feel when it comes to, and what I'm circling around to, when it came to the Sudfeld decision, when it came to wanting to tank this game to get that number 6 overall pick, that came from Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie. There's nobody that's going to convince me that it didn't. How that information got filtered down is a result of what relationships have been in place within this Eagles organization and coaching staff.
Right. Because it made sense when you look at it that way, for a reason why not Doug wasn't fired today. Because if it in fact did happen that nobody knew, or half the players knew and some didn't, and it was a shock to Jalen maybe coming out. Who knows? We all watched his reaction. Who knows what he actually was really saying? It looked like he was kind of surprised. But it's a matter of, you know what? Jeff and Howie probably eyeballed each other and said, okay, he did it. And Doug's still going to be the coach. But how do
there's no
be the coach?
Really quick, Mitch. Like, there's no way that they're not bringing Doug Peterson back. I mean, the day after the loss, Howie Roseman and Doug Peterson are both taking questions from reporters. If Doug is not back in 2021, he is not there doing a presser. It's that simple. They knew Doug was going to be coming back.
So Jeff, how do you fix this? I mean, you and I watch this, and I would tell Brendan this, and I've been watching football for, 60 or 50 some odd years, okay? I have never been on a football field, all right? But I've watched a hell of a lot of football. And I'm watching this guy with this offense and trying to just be conscious of what makes sense for this quarterback who had no clue this year what was going on. Like we just talked about earlier, not putting him in, and that's what they always say, got to put the Andy Reid's pat line, got to put him in a better position. Doug didn't adjust. He just didn't adjust. And is Carson really, is that relationship fractured as we heard? Does Carson trust him to come back, or is Doug going to be told, you know what, Doug? And I don't think it's going to happen. I just want to get your thoughts. You're not making the call. You're not play calling this year. Yeah, we're going to bring somebody else in. Is that even a possibility?
As I was saying at the top, I don't think that's a possibility. The one thing Doug Peterson wants to do is run his offense the way that he wants to run his offense. There are going to be offensive changes, like I mentioned earlier, for sure. I would be shocked if there wasn't an offensive coordinator, an actual offensive coordinator brought in.
Really?
Whether or not I would be shocked. I mean, it doesn't mean that the OC is going to be calling plays necessarily.
Okay.
But I think gaining some sort of balance on offense, and it goes to Doug. Like, the one thing we've seen, I think, with Doug over all these years is that he has, I mean, for a guy who's been around the NFL for a long time, not only as a player, but then as a coach, he was in Kansas City, comes to the Eagles, wins Super Bowl 52. Yes, we're in a downtime here, but I don't know how he hasn't necessarily been able to utilize his relationships throughout the league more effectively to bring in people that he wants. Now, yes, he wanted to keep Mike Groh on board last year, but the decision came from Jeffrey Lurie that no, we're going to bring in other guys, Doug. You are not going to be hiring who you want to hire. Do I think that's part of the problem? Yes, it's what they're going to need to. That's what they're going to need to straighten out as part of this offseason. But I do think we're going to see some new faces from a coaching staff from an offensive standpoint. Is Scangarello going to be here? Marty Morningwig? I don't know. Again, too many cooks in the kitchen, perhaps.
Right.
And I think a lot of this, again, and Doug is culpable, for sure. Everybody's culpable. Carson Wentz is.
Mm-hmm.
But I really do think, and we've been talking about on the Philadelphia Sports Table podcast show, that Howie Roseman really at the end of the day just seems to continue to perpetuate a theme and also this notion that, season to season after Super Bowl 52, it's kind of just, we're having one bad moment. We heard that this past week. We have one bad moment. And what was that one bad moment? Was it the season overall? Was it drafting Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson? Was it the selection of J.J. Arcega-Whiteside or the trade up for Andre Dillard or the second-round bet on an injured Sidney Jones that never necessarily panned out? Would have been nice to have Sidney Jones on the roster this year. Maybe that was the mistake he was talking about, or guaranteeing Alshon Jeffrey's 2020 contract, or how about expecting a 33-year-old Deshaun Jackson to solve their lack of speed? It's like let's think about the fact that they passed on acquiring DeAndre Hopkins and Stephon Diggs as well. That bad moment slip that he is talking about consistently, Mitch, over these years, it's mind-boggling to me. Any other general manager with that consistent theme that, I have to do better, and we're having these bad moments, that person has not been held accountable. And I think at the end of the day, there's validity to just about all of these different arguments. There's no one silver bullet. But I think they find themselves in a last-place roster just completely devoid of young building block players. Their salary cap situation is absolutely just a train wreck. And they have a quarterback who reportedly wants out before his $128 million contract extension begins. So, how do you get here? You get here because of decisions that are being made at the top. And due to the cap situation, and yes, COVID definitely played a part in it for sure. It absolutely did. But we're in this cap situation because of somebody who is supposed to be a, quote, cap genius in Howie Roseman. And I don't think he can be labeled as such moving forward in any way, shape, or form. But it's just overall, I think, a flawed plan of a team that was kind of just too impressed with itself for far too.
Well, and listen, I mean, we've all seen his draft picks in the past 3, 5, 7 years. How many of them are have been Pro Bowlers? I think it's been one, right? I mean, and so Jeffrey Lurie, if you really want to think about it, Jeffrey Lurie's the problem. By not admitting to himself, you know what, Howie hasn't really done a good job with his picks. I love the guy, but we got to make a change. I mean, that's and we're going to get into this with the Phillies, with player and talent evaluation. Both of these teams suck in terms of talent evaluation. It's absolutely amazing how bad they are, and something's got to get done. I mean, and at the beginning of the show, I talked about these two organizations and loyalty, and then it was the same for a while for the Flyers, but they moved on to Chuck Fletcher and away from Paul Holmgren and Bobby Clark, and they're on a better path. And look at the Sixers; they finally got rid of Brett Brown and brought in a real coach and made some decisions with a GM, and they're thriving.
Right.
These other organizations are pissing people off quite a bit, including myself.
They are, and they should. Listen, we are fans that are invested in this team and have been for quite some time. It's been decades for me. I've seen the highs. I've seen the lows. This is definitely right at the bottom in terms of the lows. But you talk about the drafting of Howie Roseman, and absolutely. But it goes, I think, even a little bit deeper, Mitch. It goes to this, Howie Roseman, his lamenting about how much he overvalued continuity, because this basically was the fourth offseason in a row where he's conveyed that sentiment. And think about the fact that he has prioritized, we'll go back to this past offseason, the overarching offseason philosophy was prioritizing the defense by signing Javon Hargrave, trading for Darius Slay at the exclusion of upgrading the offense, and that resulted in the Eagles having the fourth worst passing offense in the league per DVOA. Their only veteran addition to the offense last season, Mitch, and I until I looked it up, I didn't even realize it. It was Nate Sudfeld, who has become the poster boy for tanking at this point. So it's hard to say what role 3 years of underwhelming weapons at wide receiver played in Carson Wentz's just complete demise this season, or the collapse of the offense as a whole. But I think it's pretty clear that the additions of Slay and Hargrave didn't make enough of an impact on a defense that fell from 12th in defensive DVOA in 2019 to 15th this season. So you have to look at the overarching philosophy of what this Eagles front office is, not just from a drafting perspective, but also team building in general. And that does come to the fact of what you just mentioned. Player development hasn't been there. It hasn't necessarily been a priority, especially when you have drafts where you may only have 5 players being drafted. So it's certainly an issue where they're going to need to pivot. And Howie Roseman talked about the fact that they need to. And I'll be, I'm not gonna hold my breath in terms of his pivot.
No, and so Brendan was talking about, they get the 6th pick. Going to be hard to screw that up. Who do you think they should take? What position?
I really want to look at some more scouting reports, quite frankly. Of course, I love Jamar Chase. Right. I really hope that it is an offensive pick, quite frankly, because this team needs to score points in the future. This team definitely needs to score points. And I also think, too, and people have disagreed with me about this in the past, but that even drafting an offensive lineman, even though I don't necessarily think from a value perspective there might be an offensive lineman there at number 6 for them to take, this is an aging offensive line. It is an inconsistent offensive line. And you aren't going to be able to do anything in this league from an offensive standpoint unless you have a solid offensive line. That's the foundation of success.
You got to
for
protect the
offense
quarterback
in this league.
Yep.
Exactly. It is the foundation of offensive success in this passing league. Therefore, because we still don't know what we have at the left tackle position, the left guard position is arguably average at best, and you have 2 very aging and injured players on the right side of the line in Lane Johnson and Brandon Brooks, two guys who I absolutely love because they give their all out there constantly, all the time.
Right.
But we have to start looking at the future. How he talked about it, I want to see him step up to the plate, but I would also like to give our quarterbacks some better weaponry out there as well for the future because Zach Ertz is not going to be here anymore. Alshon Jeffrey did nothing this year.
Yeah.
Deshaun Jackson, nothing.
They redid his contract,
exactly.
right? Ugh.
Exactly. So
well, there's loyalty again. There's loyalty. I mean, maybe there's a cap hit, but it's like, what did he do? He didn't do anything. He's not the old Alshon Jeffrey. He's
right.
The older Alshon Jeffrey.
Exactly. And there should have been some sort of, I don't want to necessarily say writing on the wall, but at least some concern and some caution. Even after the Super Bowl, he was playing an entire 2017 season with a torn rotator cuff. That's going to do something to your body, and it's going to affect other aspects of your body as well. And it's just a complete deterioration of a player, and we saw it, and it manifested itself over the past couple seasons. And he just had a difficult time staying healthy. And the Eagles, they're not going to bring him back, of course. They're going to shed that contract. But, man, it's about, like you said, developing players and the need to develop them in the future. I hope that pivot that Howie Roseman talked about in his presser actually does come to fruition. But I will say this, and we probably have to move on to the Phillies here, Mitch, but Eagles fans, we're going to be walking through the desert for a while. We're going to be walking without much water through a very hot and windy desert, and it's going to take some time for this entire organization and team to be built back up.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's only been 3 years, and you thought after the Super Bowl, wow, they got some pieces, and then boom, boom, all fell apart. Before we head to the Phillies, give my friends who are Giants fans what your thoughts are, because I know they're listening and waiting to hear what you have to think.
Oh, just stop already, for God's sake! I don't understand. Didn't we go through years ago a season where there was a tagline called "Suck for Luck"? Okay, that's when Indianapolis was just tanking an entire season. We saw in more contemporary history a tank for Tua season with regard to the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. This was a game, and yes, was it obvious? It was, but I don't think this is anything new. And if the Giants really wanted to increase their chances of making not only the playoffs but winning the NFC East, they should have gotten it done during the regular season. It's that simple for me.
I know. So, New York Giants fans, wah, wah, wah. Stop your crying. They didn't do it because of you. If it came down from the owner and the general manager, you know what? Go send them an email. Okay?
Exactly.
Stop whining. It's ridiculous. Well, you should have won the game. Well, yeah, we were surprised, and there's two different issues. And what I brought up was Dougie's handling of it, number one, and you got to take care of your own business. You know what? Win more games. Stop bitching that the team that were going to get you in the playoffs didn't win because they suck it.
Yeah, exactly.
Be done.
This Giants team had the opportunity to win more games. They were in some close games this season. And they just didn't get it done. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Some teams are able to be strategic in terms of how their end of season plays out. We've seen this many times before. Don't tell me the Cleveland Browns at the end of at the end of a few seasons weren't playing third stringers in order to make sure that they were going to secure number one picks in the draft and so forth and so forth. Other teams have done it. I don't understand why it's such a big deal. Probably because it was on national television in the very last game of the season.
Exactly. Well, again, and not as big an effect, but you had Ben Roethlisberger and Patrick Mahomes sitting too, and nobody bitched. But that's a whole different story. Let's talk about our lovely Phillies real quick. I was relieved when the Mets signed James McCann to catch for them. So that opened up the opportunity for the Phillies to, pursue JT. We know he wants to stay. It's going to be interesting. And again, it's just like just JT. This whole hot stove nothing's taken off. Very few things around the entire Major League Baseball has happened yet. What do you think's going to happen? When
I think a lot.
Break?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of teams are kind of just waiting for other teams to make the move.
Make the move,
at some
right?
point, yeah, some teams are going to have to make the move, and that's going to set some sort of barometer. It's going to put a line in the sand with regard to salaries, with regard to how many years on these future contracts. I mean, people have talked about, whether or not you could see a scenario in which JT Realmuto returns on a one-year deal, tests free agency again next offseason. I think that would be a huge gamble for Realmuto, especially playing a position where the risk of injury behind the plate is always, part of the job, and it's high risk, of course. And listen, one of the knocks on JT is his age. I mean, he does turn 30 in March. The free agent class next offseason it's pretty loaded, I think, from my understanding. I don't know. I think he's dealing with unfortunate timing as well. They haven't been able to agree to a contract extension, and it really, really ticked me off. My co-host at the PSC podcast show this past spring, when they couldn't get anything done.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Malpractice.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing when they started the season last year. It's like, are you going to sign JT? Are you going to sign JT? Well, let's get him signed. And then, we're in this situation. Yeah, I was not happy either.
Yeah, well, let's not forget about one particular aspect, which I think is an underrated subplot of this entire saga, and it is, how does this affect the Phillies' relationship with Bryce Harper, too? We know how much Bryce Harper respects JT Realmuto. He wants him back on the team. We saw this. I mean, we saw it with our eye.
We did.
I am so concerned that at some point down the road, and I may be a little too concerned about this, but that Bryce Harper might demand a trade.
Yep.
He may waive his no trade clause. He may say, you know what, this is not what I signed up for. However, when you look at where this organization is and guarantees by certain ownership, we'll say John Middleton, you just never know what you're going to get from him. The fans are obviously seeing it. We've seen it for quite some time. Bryce Harper is seeing it, of course. They want to win, and I know they brought in Dave Dombrowski to get them there. I'm very hesitant because this is an organization that can't get rid of their general manager. They kept him on the payroll. Andy McPhail, over all of these years, on the payroll for doing God knows what. He even admitted, I'm hardly ever in Philly. I really don't know what's going on here.
Ridiculous.
It's a culture of good buddies, I think.
Well,
and people that. Are you there?
I'm here. I'm going to say we go back to the loyalty thing.
Oh yeah.
This franchise, especially, and I think that comes from, may he rest in peace, Dave Montgomery. I think he is the one that has instilled the thought of you be loyal to people because you need them, and it's fractured. It's turned this franchise into you held on to all those great players of the 2008 World Series when they should have and could have moved on. He could have moved on, and it got him stuck. Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, we didn't want to see him leave, but the people who do the right business in Major League Baseball, they say, you know what, I got to make the tough decision. We got to move on. We got to get younger. Boom, boom, boom. That kind of thing.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt.
I think no, that's okay. Well, I think the one thing with Dave Dombrowski too, he's been pretty low key on this whole JT saga. But I do think he is good at reading the market. In the 2017 offseason, the Red Sox needed a big bat, and JD Martinez was more or less, telegraphed to go to Boston. And Scott Boras, super agent, was in the media, spitting out all these figures and asks and things like that. But at the end of the day, Dombrowski, I think he's good at reading the market. And if he does sign JT, there could be a trade. We may see a trade with Rhys Hoskins, maybe in a package with Gene Segura. Who knows? But part of me does have some level of faith in Dave Dombrowski. Do I think he's the savior of this organization in terms of where it's going to be going over the next 5, even to 7 or 8 years? No, not at all. But I do think that there's some sort of respectable stability that he does bring to the front office.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I am getting a little bit more concerned that as time goes on, there is going to be another team that does decide to pull the plug they're the ones that are going to put the line in the sand and say, okay, we're going to take JT Realmuto. This is what the catcher's market is going to be. And then the Phillies lose out on that, and then we're seeing, Andrew Knapp for the next 5 years.
Or, I wouldn't mind having Contreras. I think they go if that happens, to go to, is that Contreras from the Cubs?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be too upset with that if they got him. All right, lots to talk about. I do listen. We could go on forever, but I only have like 4 minutes. So I am going to thank you for coming on. It was great to talk to you, Jeff.
Great talking to you too, man.
Terrific. I've been talking to Jeff Warren from the Philadelphia Sports Table podcast show. Find them on Twitter, and where else can they find the Philadelphia Sports Podcast Show, Jeff?
Yeah, we're on Twitter at Philadelphia PST. You can catch us on Apple Podcast. We're on Stitcher, of course, Spotify, iHeartRadio, your major podcasting platforms out there. We are on. We upload every week. We've been doing some fun non-sports shows as of late. We've been doing some movie reviews this past year during the pandemic. We said to ourselves, you know what? We need a break from the break in sports. And we decided to do some film reviews. It was great. We just did a show over the winter break here about concerts we've been to in the past. We missed live music and things like that. So it was fun shows. So again, at Philadelphia PST on Twitter, that's where you can catch us.
That's great. All right, listen, I again, thank you for coming on. I'm glad I found you guys. Let's do it again in the future, maybe when baseball season gets going.
Absolutely.
Right. I'm going to do a roundup of pretty much just National League. I've reached out to a bunch of beat reporters from around the league, and February and March, hoping that we're going to get these folks on and get us their thoughts. We're going to probably do 20 minutes, boom, 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 and do a couple of those shows, 3 or 4 in February, and 2 or 3 in February, 2 or 3 in March, and finish up the National League. So I'm looking forward to doing that. So love to get your input on that too.
I would love to come back on. Thanks so much for having me, Mitch. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Continue to stay safe and have a great night.
It's the Eagles off season. I'm definitely going to be enjoying myself for a little bit here.
Yes, absolutely. Waiting for 40. I think I said 47 days till pitchers and catchers or something like
exactly.
that.
Exactly. Let's get baseball season here. Let's
get it going. Yes. All right, Jeff. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
No problem, man. Take care.
Take care. All right, folks, that's going to do it. Thank you to Jeff for coming on. Appreciate it. Fun conversation. Brendan Deeg giving his thoughts about the Eagles also and the controversy, and both of them telling the Giants fans to suck it up and stop complaining. And I agree. Just get better. And Scott Simkus for coming on, talking about his book Outsider Baseball and the incorporation of the Negro League statistics into Major League statistics, which is going to be great for the game overall. And to my buddy Bernie for calling me early to talk about the Giants. And you know what, Bernie? It's the way it goes. Maybe we have let's see. Devonta Smith wins the Heisman Trophy that just came across. All right. So we'll look forward to talking to everybody next week. We do have a show coming up. Captain Lou is coming up with a bunch of guests. It's going to be a great show with Captain Lou. And following Captain Lou, we have Mike. Mike said it first at 10 o'clock Eastern Time on 12 Ounce Sports, Zingo TV channel 761. He's talking NFL Week 17 reaction, the Super Wildcard Weekend preview, and bets, why Doug Peterson was wrong, the best head coach vacancy, and more. So Captain Lou, 8 to 10. Mike said it first, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. And with that, I thank you for being here and listening with me tonight. Always a pleasure. Appreciate you being here. Replay of the show will go up within a few minutes. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Take care.